Hello everybody and welcome to the first video on my channel, a walkthrough for Masterschool CTF Level 1. I plan to do lots more in-depth walkthroughs for other CTFs, security concepts and tools, so look out for those here in the near future. If there's one thing I hope people can really take from this video is to start asking questions. Be curious, don't be afraid to search out the answer if you don't know it, always be looking for ways you can give yourself more information to work with and give yourself every chance to practice the skills that you know. This walkthrough will be fairly in-depth as I'm going to be asking these questions as we go and explaining the why behind each of my actions and choices. So without further ado, grab your favorite beverage and let's see if we can capture some flags. So the first thing I want to mention here is that obviously I've got my attack box running on the right-hand side and my target machine up and running here on the left. I've chosen to use the Kali attack box rather than the standard recommended attack box, and that's for a few reasons. Mostly for me, it's an ease of use. I have a virtual machine that runs Kali Linux on my own computer at the moment, so it's familiar. And it's also going to give me those quality of life things, so I can type commands, and if Kali recognizes the command, it's going to turn blue. I know I've typed it correctly. Or if I'm going to type a file path, something like this, desktop/word lists, I'm going to see it go bold. Whereas if I make a spelling mistake here, it's no longer going to be, and then I can correct that as I go without having to find out later, trawling through my command, what typo did I make? Why isn't it working? So for those reasons, I'd recommend this over the attack box, especially if you're going to be running your own virtual machines. So first of all, we're giving a little introduction to this. We're given a link where we can find additional information. Told that we can boot up our virtual machines, and that the SSH username is CTF, and to guess the password, our hint being, don't overthink it. It's only 3 letters long, so we're going to assume it's also CTF for this. So that's where that will be my start point, is SSH, and then we're going to be logging as the CTF user, so the CTF at, and then the IP address of our target machine, which for me will be 10.10.231.16. It's our first time logging to the machine, so it's going to ask us if we're sure we want to connect. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to put in our password. In terminals, passwords don't show up, so you just have to trust that I am typing it. I'm going to hit enter, and we're going to wait a moment, and hopefully that's all going to go through, and we're going to be in the system. That does seem to work. Our user has now changed from root at Kali to CTF at Masterschool. And we can already see, welcome to Masterschool CTF, first flag, hackers are us. And if you're following along and doing this with me, this is not the first system flag, the first one listed on the Try Hack Me. Down towards the bottom, there's a pair called Other flags. This is the first of those other flags. So we're now corrected. I'm not going to be opening this flags tab purely because I don't want people to just come into the video, screenshot, and then just put in all the answers if they are following along. I don't feel that's helpful at all. So, but I will be stopping whenever we find each flag and saying where in the list it goes. So let's have a look at our additional information and our first tasks for our CTF challenges. And those are going to be some basics of user creation. It's user switch, folder and file creation, and then switching back. So we're going to create a new user, switch to that user, make a folder and file with a little message in it, and then swap back to our original CTF user. So let's start by creating a user. Actually, before that, whenever I log into a system for the first time, the first thing I want to know is how powerful of a user am I? What privileges do I have access to? What sudo commands can I run? What commands can I run as if I were the root user? So to get that information, I'm going to type sudo space -l to give me a list of the sudo commands that I am able to perform as the CTF at Masterschool user. I can run that, and I can find that with no password required, I only have permissions to run the add user command. Well, this is quite convenient for our purposes, as that is our first task. So knowing that, I'm going to run sudo add user, and let's make the user, in this case, Thomas. It'll make some home files and directories and groups. It'll ask me for a password, which I will make. Ask me to retype it. A lot of information here I don't need to put in for now. Say yes, it's correct. And I have now made a new user. I haven't swapped to that user. I'm still CTF at Masterschool, but that user now exists. So now I can switch to that user. And to switch to another user, you can use the command su, aptly named for switch user, and then the name of the user you wish to switch to. So for me, that's going to be su Thomas. I'm going to put in the password I've just created for Thomas, and I'm going to find that my CTF Masterschool, I have now changed to Thomas at Masterschool. So clear indication that that was successful and I have swapped users. Now, our next step was to make a folder and then a file. So one thing I'll demonstrate here is if I were to run mkdir make directory in order to make a folder, let's call it test folder as an example, and I was trying to make it in the location I am at the moment, I'm going to get a permission denied error. And that's because although I've swapped users, I haven't swapped where I am in the system. I'm still currently in CTF's home directory, and only CTF and the root user will have permission, or should have permission, to make folders and files there. So I need to move to my home directory, the Thomas home directory, and I can do that either with just CD or with CD space tiddle, the wiggly line symbol. Here we'll just do it with CD change directory. And we can see it's taken us to our location is this little tiddle wiggle symbol, wiggly line symbol that represents our home directory. And now if I were to make this run the same command previously, no error this time. Let's list the contents of this file with ls. We found we have indeed made a folder here called test folder. Now to make a file inside that folder, for now let's navigate into the folder with our change directory and then test folder, the name of the folder, and make a little file with a message in it. Now there's quite a few ways we could do this. We could create a file with touch, naming it however we like. For example, it would something look like this command, but make a file called message.txt that we could then add text to. We could do it all in one line by echoing a message. In this case, let's do hello world, and sending that to the file we want to create. Now, since this file doesn't already exist, it's going to make a new file with this message in it. If this already did exist, then this would replace whatever was in the contents of that file already with the text hello world. If I simply wanted to add to a file, like add a new line with the words hello, with the sentence hello world, I'd use two more than symbols to append, to add to the contents of message.txt with my message. But for this case, we're creating something from scratch, so we're just going to use the singular more than sign. And I can run that. I can use my ls to see if a message has been created. I should have a file called message.txt. I do, and I can open it with my cat command, have it printed to the terminal with cat to make sure it does indeed say hello world, and it does. So far, so good. We could also use a text box editor, such as Nano or Vim. For this example, I'll use Nano. Let's make a file called message2.txt with Nano. That's going to open a fresh text box that I can now type in anything I'd like. Let's make the message for this one, hello Nano. And whatever text box you're using, they'll all work quite similarly. Mostly the difference will be, how do I leave? How do I get back to my terminal? And in this instance for Nano, it's this at the bottom, this up and X that represents pressing and holding Control and pressing X. It's going to ask me if I want to save the buffer when I do that. I'm going to put in a Y for yes. And then it's going to ask me, is this the file name you wish to write to? Is this what you want to call this file? It is, so I'm going to hit enter. And we're back to my terminal window. I'm going to list to what's in this folder. Hopefully I now see message.txt and message2.txt. And I do, and just like before, I can cat to print message2.txt, the contents of it, to the screen. And I see that did indeed work, and now reads, hello Nano. So we've created a new user, we've swapped to that user, we've made a folder and then a file with a message inside. Now the only thing left to do is to switch back to our original user. Same idea as before, SU, except this time we're going back to the CTF user. I need to enter the password for the user I'm logging in as, which in this case is CTF. So the password, as remember, is CTF. And I'm now back to being CTF at Masterschool. And once again, we can see, although my user has changed, where I am in the directory has not, my location has not. So let's move back to the CTF home folder with just CD. Now I'm going to take a moment here to mention why having a user who can run the add user command with sudo permissions is probably not a very good idea and shouldn't be common practice, because the ability to add, yes, it gives you the ability to create new users, but it also allows you the ability to add those users to groups. One of those groups you could add that user to is the sudo group. So for example, I could write as CTF, because if we remember, I have the sudo add user ability. I could write sudo add user Thomas, the user I created, and then I can put in a group name afterwards, in this case, sudo. I can run this command, and as we can see, it's adding user Thomas to the group sudo, adding user Thomas to the group sudo, done. So now, let's swap back to Thomas for a second and see what's changed. Put in Thomas's password. We swap back over to Thomas. Let's have a look at what sudo permissions Thomas now has access to with sudo -l. Put in his password, and we find that he can run all sudo commands on this server, on this computer. So we have managed to create effectively a user much more powerful than what we started off with. We have escalated our privileges, and just like before, we are not able to make a folder It's test folder 2. In the CTF directory, we should get a permission denied because this is not our space, this is CTF's home directory. But now I could run it as a sudo command, as if I were the root user. And that seems to have gone through. Let's check it with ls. And we can see now there is indeed a folder in here called test folder that I've made as the user Thomas in the CTF home directory. And I have incredible power over the system at this point. I can go searching for passwords for the root password. I could go searching for private keys. I could go and delete files. I could create files wherever I like. I have any folder or file that I wouldn't normally be able to open. I could change the file permissions on with sudo chmod to change the permissions on that folder. Example, probably to 777 if I'm just looking for quick and dirty easy access. This will give everyone, both the owner, group, and everyone else, access to read, write, and execute permissions for that folder or file, and allow me to navigate into it even if I normally wouldn't be able to. So a little off topic there, but I think a very good thing to show that if you see that you have access to sudo add user when you enter a system, you are only a few steps away from almost being an admin of that computer, almost being similar in power or close, like similar in power with extra steps to the root user of that system. Okay. Now I will switch back to CTF and we will get on with these flags. CTF's password. Okay, and let's see what information we're given to start off with. So we're told to swap back to the root user. In that case, that's CTF. For this one, there are 4 file system flags. One of them is find_flag.txt. I'm going to make a little copy of this. And we're told all the flags of CTFs have the same structure. They start with an open curly bracket and end with an open curly bracket and have something inside. So it'll be good to keep in mind. We can keep an eye out. Maybe we can even end up using a grep command in a file later to see if we can search for something like this. So immediately we're given the name of a file. So I want to find that file, and how best to find that file then with the find command. Now the find command really only needs one thing, and that's a starting point, where to search from. If I want to search from the root of the computer or the whole computer, I'm just going to use 1//. Maybe I want to search just from where I am now in the CTF at Masterschool directory, in which case I'd use a dot to represent my current location. Maybe I want to give a path. Maybe I want to search the var folder for it from there. But whatever section we want to do, we need to give it a start point. Now, I don't know where this find_flag.txt file is going to be. It could be anywhere on the computer. So I want to search the whole computer. So I'm going to use /that, just representing the start point of the computer, the root directory. Now I can start to narrow my search, because I could run this now. It would give me a list of every file and folder on this computer, and a lot and a lot and a lot of permission denied errors as it tried to search for places that I'm not allowed to read. So we know the name, so we can use -name and put in, I can paste it in as I copied it earlier. Put in the name of our file. We know we're looking for a file and not a folder, so I can set it to a type, and that type to be F for file. If I was searching for a folder or a directory, I could use type D. In this case, type F will do the job perfectly. And now I could run this command now. As I said before, this is going to run with a lot of errors because it's going to be searching places we don't have the permissions to go and view. And I'll show that as an example here when I hit enter, that we'll just get permission denied, permission denied, permission denied over and over and over and over. And that could take quite a long time to finish and chug through. So I need to add a little bit extra to the end of my find command to tell it to take all of those errors and send them to the bin, get rid of them, don't show them to me. Only show me the responses where you actually find the file. So to that, I'm going to do that with 2 more than dev/dev/null. So that's going to take all the errors, send them to, this is the null variable, and it's located at this file path. So take all the errors. Null is effectively, I try to think of it as the void, the black hole, the bin. Take all the errors and send those errors to the bin. And now when I run it, I can find it's found one instance of it already. It's still searching through the rest of the computer, so it hasn't completed yet. Obviously, the find command doesn't know what I already suspect is that there's only one of this file on the computer, so it's just going to run through and make sure it is. And we find, yes, we have found findflag.txt. It is at /var/backups. I could maneuver over to that location with CD, in which case I'd be going to /var/backups. But I suspect my other system flags will probably still be here in the CTF home directory. So let's just copy this whole path and use cat to show us the contents of this file in our terminal window. And we find our first system flag, find_flag_fun. 1 down, 3 to go for this section. Right. Clear up my screen a little bit from all these permission errors. And here's where I want to get to, arming yourself with information. Where do we go from here? We should need to take a look around. One thing I haven't done yet is just ask, what is here in this home directory? What is at this location? So I'm going to use ls to list what's at this location. And we see flag, a folder called flag, sounds promising, a folder called hash to crack, and a folder called test folder, that being the one I made earlier. So if you're following along and didn't do the sudo privilege escalation, then you may not have this folder. But this doesn't give us a whole lot of information. It's just, here are some basic items. It doesn't give me any information about those items. So I want to modify my ls command a little bit to give me more information. I want to arm myself with as much information as possible. So first of all, I'm going to do -l. It's going to put them all in one column, down in a list format, and give me some information about their owners, the groups, the permissions of those files, when they were created or when they were last modified. And so I see here I've got a bit what type of file they are, so I can see these are all directories shown by the D at the front, and that the majority, there's a reasonable permissions on pretty much all of them. And now I can go a little bit further with my ls command. I want to use the A tag as well. That's going to show me all hidden files and folders at this location, which is any folder or file that starts with a dot in its name. And I shall now, that's given me quite a bit more information. I have a lot of files and folders I didn't have here before. I see a .cache folder I didn't see before, a .f.txt file, a .local folder, .profile. I also see these two at the start that whenever I use this command, I should see in every file and folder, pretty much every file and folder. The dot being where I am at the moment, and the two dots being kind of like the back button in your Windows Explorer to go one step back up the chain. So first, immediately, this one stands out to me, this .f.txt. So let's have a print of this to the terminal and see if it's going to be another flag. And it is. We get a hide in plain sight. And for those following along, this is the 4th system flag, I believe. So we've gone a little out of order here, but you can't always be sure you're going to come across every flag in the right order. Now, nothing else here stands out to me immediately more than the flag folder. That still is the one that's glaring at me, saying this is where you're going to find your answers. Here's what you're looking for. So I'm going to move into that directory with cd, and then use the same ls command with the same tags on it to show me what is in the flag folder. And here we see these same dot and two dots, the previous file that we expect, and 8 folders numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a file called story.txt. Now, before we get into all of these folders, maybe this text file has something to do with all of these. We've been using a lot of cat to print things to the screen, so let's use this opportunity to use something a little different, and we'll open it with Nano. Make sure we take every opportunity we have to practice, even just the little things, even sometimes when it's unnecessary, because that's how we get it stuck in the head. And I can open that up in my Nano box, and I can see we definitely have some kind of story going on here. Actually, that's a good point. Let's make this big screen a little bigger. So we see lots of, it seems like vowels replaced by letters, but if we remember, we're looking for curly brackets. Curly brackets. Aha. And we find another system flag, this being the 2nd system flag. Now, this will be a block to break down and read that we could do. I'm going to keep going in this instance. If I feel like I need to, I'll come back to this, but we have got a flag off of it already. And so I'm just going to exit. No need to save, as we haven't changed anything. And let's see if we can do something. We've got one system flag left to go and 8 folders. So let's move into one of these folders and have a look what's inside. I have another folder called the letter D. Okay, let's have a look inside that one. Move into it and have a look. A folder with the letter S. Okay, let's move into that one and have a look what's in there. A folder with the letter A. All right, at this point, I don't know how deep these are going to go. I don't know whether there's going to be anything at the end of it. And there's 8 of these starting points. Maybe there's going to be a text file at the end of one of these with a flag in it, and I don't want to have to go through each of these individually, especially if it's going to be like number 8 and I'm starting at number 1. So let's maneuver back to our flag folder where I started, using that wiggly line symbol tilde to represent our home directory, essentially this part of the path. And I'm going to use a find command here because I know that it can print files, it can print folders, and I know that I can give it a starting point that isn't the whole computer. I can tell it to start where I am at the moment. So we're going to use find and a dot to say start from where I am at the moment. Remember, this dot here is representing the current directory that we're in. I don't have a name. I don't know what the file is I'm searching for, but let's start with a type. Let's start by showing all the folders, because they were letters, so maybe they spell out something that might give me another clue. Now, this will probably be enough. I don't think I'll need my 2 more than dev/dev/null, because this is my home directory. I should have permissions to move around and change things here and delete things here and read things here. So I shouldn't come across any errors. So we'll just run this. And I find if I scroll up, immediately I get a list of files and folders, and I see flag don't go in Masterschool run away. Okay. Off this, I'm kind of tempted to suggest it might be in this Masterschool, especially if it said don't go in there. But let's change this type of my find command to search for files instead of folders. And when I search for files, it finds the story that we had from our current directory. I'll dot the current position, and also finds f_l_a_g.txt at the end of that Masterschool directory. Now, I could have even saved myself a step here by not specifying a type at all and just saying, show me all files and folders from this point on, with just find space dot. And I would have seen that, yes, at the end of this Masterschool directory, we have flag.txt. So now we're going to copy and paste that file path onto our cat command to print the contents of flag.txt to our terminal. And there it is, our third, and in the case of this walkthrough, final system flag. Now, we could probably find quite a lot of flags on this computer with uses of the find command. It can be very versatile. I could even take stabs in the dark by using wild characters and say, I want you to show me files that end, I want you to search the whole computer for files that end in g.txt. So any number of characters or letters and then g.txt. And since we're searching the whole computer, I'll send the permission errors to the bin. And I'll probably get quite a lot of things here. But I can already see that I'm finding a server FTP flag. I'm finding a flag.txt in a var www HTML. There's the first one we found, find_flag.txt. Here's the one that we just got at the end of the Masterschool section with the underscores. So we could kind of take stabs in the dark with find commands and different formats to try and stumble upon something and give us ideas if we're truly stuck. But for now, let's just continue normally and go for some web page flags. Seems to be the next section. Your task is to find hidden flags hidden within the web pages. They might be hidden in the HTML comments or in a hidden page. Your ability to locate these flags will underscore your skills in web application security and your understanding of how data is stored, transmitted, and manipulated. So, based on what I know, or I can assume by them saying web page flags, is that there's a website. Okay, so immediately I want to go visit that website. I want to be, can I look at this in a web browser? But before we get to that, I'm going to go one step prior, because I do know a website is nothing but files and folders on a computer, on a server somewhere. And we only have this one active machine that we're attacking. So they must be, those files and folders must be on this server somewhere. But for now, I'm just going to see if how many of these I can get, because it's good practice, from outside of the server. So, and for that, I'm going to do this purely because I feel like most CTFs, you're not going to already have access to the server. You're going to have to exploit something, maybe on a web page, to allow you access, rather than it happening the other way around. Also, because this builds in what I feel to be that inquisitive, let's ask questions mindset, let's gather information. And one of the great gathering information tools is Nmap. So I'm going to run a Nmap, a port search on this IP address, 231, and I'm going to give it a couple tags with extra things I want to know. I'd love to know what services and versions of services are running on each of those ports. I'd like it to be quite verbose, give me some good information about it. And let's tell it to run at a fairly aggressive speed of 4, since we're doing a capture the flag. Now this is going to be my go-to tool at the beginning of pretty much any CTF that I'm doing. I want to run Nmap straight away. I want to get the lay of the land. I want to arm myself with as much information as I possibly can. And that's what Nmap does. It gives you the lay of the land. It tells you what you're working with. how you could connect to this system. For example, here we see that on port 22 there is an open SSH port. That is how we connected to this server in the first place. On port 21, the standard port, we see an FTP, a file transfer protocol service that we may end up coming back to. I see SMTP, I see HTTP. Now, whenever I see HTTP, my mind thinks immediately, this is a website. This is a website. And as soon as I see this, I want to go visit that website. I want to find out what's on that website. I want to give myself more information. So I'm going to open the browser here and literally just type in the IP address of my target machine. And see what I can find. And I immediately get a fairly basic website as Masterschool, and I immediately see in the curly brackets what I can assume to be a web page flag. And it is in fact the first web page flag that we are asked to find. First of 8. Now we're also mentioned that we might find other flags or in the HTML comments on hidden pages. So in the HTML comments, because of that, let's always make sure we're checking the page sources of these web pages that we find and seeing if we can find anything in the comments, which will be these green commented out text. And staring us in the face at the top of the page, printed 5 times just to make sure we can't miss it, another web flag, which will be our second web flag. There, just hidden in the comments waiting for us. So that was on the web page. Then we found one in the HTML comments. What do I mean about hidden pages? So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to use a tool that can help discover additional pages on a website. And that's GoBuster, which is going to take a word list of common web page names, and it's going to try them against the website that you choose, and it's going to go down the list and it's going to try word 1. Is that a page? Does that exist? Word 2. Is that a page? Does that exist? Word 3, word 4, word 5, and so on and so forth. So the way I'm going to write out this command is GoBuster dir for directory, and then a --u to say I'm going to give you a URL now. So the -u is for, and that URL is going to be http:// and then my IP address. You could also get this if I just went into my browser and copied and pasted. We would also see, okay, well, normally you would see that http:// before the IP address given. So I've given it a target. Now I need to give it a word list to use. And the word list we're going to use for this is the common.txt word list. And that on the Kali box and the Kali Linux machine is located at /usr/share/wordlist/derb/common.txt. And I know that this is a legitimate path because once again, Kali's doing the nice thing for me and making it all bold to show, yes, this is indeed correct. If I made a spelling mistake, it wouldn't be. Now, if you're using the regular attack box on TryHackMe rather than a Kali box or a Kali virtual machine, then this will be located in a slightly different location. I'll build this out so we can be able to see it better. It will be located at USR share, word lists, sec lists, discovery, web content, common.txt at this location. Now, if you're ever having trouble finding the location of this file, it will still be called common.txt. So you could use the find command earlier we used on our own system to find it. Now here, obviously, this hasn't gone bold because this would be the attack box location of it, and this path doesn't exist on the Kali box that I'm using. Time to run our command. So we've taken all the words from our word list, tried them one by one onto this web page, checking for extra pages, and we have found a few. Now we've got quite a few status 403s, which are going, we don't have permission to access these pages. We can't go to the server status page. I mean, we can try. Always good to go find out. And I found forbidden, you don't have permission to access this resource. Then we can go and see, so it'll be the same. We see some 200s, which means great success. This page exists. You can go visit it. And we have a redirect status that's actually sending us from /flag to /flag/, which tells me /flag that this is actually likely a folder that's going to have multiple things in it. But let's start from the bottom. So I see /robots.txt. First thing I do when I see that, I want to go and visit that page. I want to open my web browser and find out what is at /robots.txt. And I find, zoom in a bit, I immediately see a flag. That's actually going to be our third web page flag. And I see a bit more information here. And we find that what the robots.txt file does for websites is it's telling search engines what pages on your website do you not want the search engine to list on searches. So for example, like your admin login pages. And in this case, it's saying don't display in your search results /hide.html. And just because the search engine won't display it on their search results doesn't necessarily mean we can't go there. So let's go have a look at what's at /hide.html. And I get another basic web page, but another flag, the hide flag, this being our fourth web page flag. And once again, because we know things might be hidden in the HTML comments and it's always good to look, let's view the page source and make sure we're not missing anything. Google Tag Manager and Google Site Branding, Navigation, Masthead. Doesn't seem to be anything here in the comments. Okay, well, robots.txt was good. Let's have a look at index.html. Let's keep going. Here we find what looks to be the first web page that we made it to. Same tag. Let's have a look in the comments, make sure nothing's different. Let's always be rigorous. Note we see the same, another web flag in the comments. There's nothing else here. No other flags. Okay. Nothing else on that one. Okay, let's keep going. /flag sounds promising. /flag. And immediately we get to a folder location. So we can see that it did indeed redirect us to /flag/. And we see a folder in this location called flag. So let's click on that folder and see what's inside. 2 text files, okay? flag.txt and flag2.txt. Let's have a look at the first one. Well, immediately another flag for us, this actually being the 7th of 8 web page flags, if you're following along still. And congratulations if you are, and I haven't bored you to death already. Then, yeah. So there's that one. Let's have a look at flag 2. Ooh. There's something here, but it's obviously not in the correct format that we want it. It's not in the curly brackets style. So for me, especially with these 2 equal signs on the ends, this seems like base 64 to me. Now, if I wanted to be sure, I'm sure I could go into Google and go into many item like websites that identify what format this is in, what encoding this uses. I'm certain it would spit out and tell you, probably exactly also tell you what it decoded as. But I'll also show you how you can do it in the terminal window, and that's by echoing it and then piping it, saying send the output of this command and using it as the output of another command. It's going to be to base 64 and -d for decode rather than encode, because base 64 command will encode by default. And I can run that. I find, yes, this was indeed base 64 because it has printed me out another flag, this being the 8th of 8 web page flags. So where to go from now? We're missing 2, number 5 and number 6. And this is where we have to know a little bit more, a little bit deeper into exactly what GoBuster is doing. And actually, there's an example. We found a page at hide.html. Now, I find it quite unlikely that the word hide wasn't in the common word list. It seems like that might be the case. So I'm going to open up this common.txt word file, and let's see if we can find in this list. Well, you can tell that this bit wasn't planned. Find. Is the word hide in the list? It is. Okay. So why didn't it find hide.html? Is it because it needed to specifically be hide.html, and hide.html isn't in the list? Okay. Well, that's a bit of a limitation. Is there anything I can do to add the .html? And when I'm asking these some questions, I want to let's learn some additional information about the GoBuster command, and we'll use help. So we learn that it can do a couple different things here. It can be used we're using it for a directory file enumeration. It can also do other things. Let's see if we can type in specifically some help using the directory file enumeration mode. Slash cookie to strings extensions, file extensions to search for with -x. Okay, so let's see if we can add this to our previous GoBuster command -x, and let's use that HTML and see if it finds the hide.html file that we had before. We may not find anything additional, but we're potentially, if this works, we'll have learned something very useful about the GoBuster tool. And we find, yes, it indeed. By adding that -x space -x space HTML on the end, we did indeed find /hide.html. We've had /index.html twice. That now suggests to me that index.html and just the word index were both in the list. And what the -x.html is actually doing is saying, does this word already have a dot something? Does it already have an extension? If it doesn't, add this extension and then try it on the web page. If it does, just try it on the web page. But I also see /index2.html. So let's go back. So we haven't seen that before, and have a look at index2.html. And we see an Apache 2 Ubuntu default page. Let's have a quick scan. Remember, we're searching for curly brackets. Aha. There. And this one we find is our 6th web page flag. Only one left to go. So where could that last one be? Let's think. This HTML worked and found us an extra one, so maybe we can try another extension. We found a text file, like with our flag.txt and our robots.txt. So let's try our GoBuster command again, but let's use the txt extension this time and see what it digs up. And see if we find anything additional. Yes, we find /secret.txt. And again, we see 2 instances of robots.txt this time, probably for the same reason that in the list there's robots.txt and there's also robots. And it works the way that we think it does. So let's have a look at secret.txt. And there's our last web page flag, which our case will be number 5, I do believe. Congratulations on making it this far. We got a little bit left to go, but we're easily more than halfway through at this point and doing really well. And we managed to find all of the web page flags without actually having been inside the system, just by having the right tool for the job and then learning a bit more about that tool to be able to narrow what it was doing, figure out what it was doing, and then just tweak it slightly in order to eke out a little bit of extra information. So now I'm going to move back over to the CTF at Masterschool user, back in the system, and I'm going to show how we could have got to these flags without having to have known how to use any of this tool, or this tool existed, or any of this, journey that we just went on. And that's literally going to start with the web pages, and web pages are nothing but files and folders on a server somewhere. They must be on this server somewhere. Let's Google where are web page files usually stored on Linux, and see what it comes up. In general, document with Apache and Nginx might be one of these, /var/www or /srv/www. Okay, looks promising. Let's have a look in /var. Let's move to /var, and then let's have a look inside here and see if there's a folder called www. And there it is, right at the bottom, www. All right, let's move into www. Have a look what's here. Okay, another folder called HTML. Let's have a look into HTML. We start to find the files that we found on the website. We find our secret.txt, the robots.txt file, the index.html that was just the standard web page, the index2, the configuration page, the hide.html file, the robots text file was telling the search engines not to show, the flag folder that presumably has another flag folder in it, and the flag1 and the flag and flag2.txts. Using the cd ... to go back a step, go back 2 steps to the HTML file, HTML folder. And one thing I always look out for is patterns. And that's going to be, there's kind of a big one when it's come to all of the flags we found bar 1. And that's, they all end in a G and then a closed curly brackets, because they're all some form of something flag or something flag, and sometimes the letters are, or like the L's are replaced with numbers, sometimes vowels are replaced with numbers, but the G never seems to be replaced. There's not a good number replacement for it. So maybe I can have a lot of the work here done for me rather than going through each of these individually, which I very much could do and may even still have to do. But here's an opportunity to use a command that we haven't used yet to practice one, our grep command. So I'm going to grep for something that ends in G, something that ends in G curly brackets. And I do that with a backslash and then G curly brackets. I also want it to do this recursively. I want it to search all the files and folders at this location and then go into the flag folder, search there, and then go into that flag folder and search there. And I'm just going to run and see what we find. So there's the secret flag from secret.txt. There are all 5 copies of the another web flag from the index.html, the robots flag from robots.txt, the configuration flag from index2.html, the flag from flag.txt, and the hide flag from hide.html. So just with that small command, we found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. The remaining 2, which we know from having done it the other way, will be the one that was base 64 encoded, and the one that is on the generic web page. On the generic web page, the student_CTF_web. One of those, in this instance, having done it this way, would be easy to find. because we can search what file of these haven't we looked at yet, and that will have been flag2.txt. None of these have looked inside flag2.txt, but then to find that last one, we'd either have to have visited the web page in a browser, or have trawled through them back again to find it inside index.html. So the grep command isn't going to be the be all end all, because it can't promise you that it's going to find everything. Hell, it probably won't ever find everything unless you're very lucky. But it was an opportunity to use a command I hadn't used yet, to get some extra practice in with it so that it stays in my brain. All right. That's all our web page flags. Now we're on to hashes. And I seem to remember in the CTF home directory, there was a folder called hash to crack. There it is. Now, let's move into that folder. Look inside, and we find #1, #2, #3, #4, #5, and a word list. Makes sense. We're probably going to be needing to use this word list. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Is I'm not going to be cracking this on some online crack station or with a Kali word list. I'm going to need to use this word list to crack these 5 hashes. Otherwise, it would not be here provided for me. And I could quite likely, probably these are fairly small enough. Is it just 1 hash per text file? That does seem to be the case. That coincides with the 5 hashes we need to do the next try hack me flags we're filling in. So I could probably cat these onto the screen, right click, copy and paste, copy them, move over to my Kali box, like echo, copy it, echo it across, and send it to a file, call it hash1.txt. And that will probably work. Might be a bit more of a pain for the word list, but I'm sure we could get it done fairly quickly. But once again, here's another opportunity to use a command and a type of thing I haven't used in this yet, an opportunity to practice, and that's setting up a simple HTTP port that we could then grab the files off from our Kali machine. So we're going to do that with Python 3 -m HTTP server. And when I run this, I can see it's serving up an HTTP port on port 8000. Great. What does that mean? Okay. It means I can connect to this port and find and be at this location. This port is at this location. So I can move over to my root at Kali, and I could use wget now to get files from a web page, and I could specify its good. Scaring me for a second and thinking everything had expired, but it has not. So we'll continue. I can take my target IP address. I can say it's on port 8000. And I want hash1.txt, hash1.txt. And I can see it seems to have downloaded that. And I could say I want hash2.txt. I want hash3.txt. I want hash4.txt. I want hash5. And lastly, I want word list.txt. If I swap back over, I'll have seen I've actually made, there we go, I've made 6 GET requests that I can see here. I've asked for hash1.txt, the server's been asked for hash2, hash3, hash4, hash5, and the word list. And it's given me the IP address of where it's been asked from, the Kali IP address in this instance. Now, as it just occurs to me, I've set up an HTTP server running on this, on an extra HTTP server running on this 8000 port. I wonder if I run another Nmap scan, will I be able to see it on the Nmap scan? I presume so. So let's give it a shot. This may be off tangent, but I'm here asking questions. So let's ask questions and let's learn something by asking those questions. I do indeed. So I see port 8000 is open. It's an HTTP port. It's running simple HTTP server Python. Wonderful. Ooh, does this mean I could go there in a web browser? Now, if I specify port 8000 with :8000, the same way I did in my wget request, I see I am in a directory listing folder, and I see hash1, hash2, hash3, hash4, hash5, and a word list. Hash1 is a hash, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a word list. Amazing. Very cool. Okay. So let's have a quick check that we do indeed have all of those files now. Yes, we do. There we go. Hash1, hash2, hash3, hash4, hash5, and word list. So we do all have them all on the Kali machine. Ooh, here we go. We have more information here. More GET requests came through for all the hashes in the word list when I was opening them up in my Windows browser. This was arriving on the website unsupported post. I'll have to look into this. Oh, it even showed the Nmap check. Very interesting. You learn something new even when you're doing a walkthrough on this, recording for the 3rd time. Right, let's keep going. I've got my 5 hashes. I need at this point, in the course we've learnt to use John the Ripper and a bit of Hashcat. My preference personally is for John the Ripper, so that's what I'm going to show here. That mainly comes for me for being just a little easier to use. I don't have to find out what type of hash it is and then look for that hash, like what the hash code of that hash to use in Hashcat. I can just take it by its name and then use its name as the format for John. So first thing I need to do is what hash, what type of hash it is. So I could do that in 2 lines like this. I could take the hash, printing it to the screen, copy it, and then echo it and pipe it to hash ID, which comes installed on these Kali boxes and the attack box. And I could run that and find out that it's most likely a MD5. Generally, whenever I see MD2, MD5, MD4, double MD5, off of a hash ID, I'm going to be trying MD5 first. But that's 2 lines. Let's use this opportunity to break it down to 1 line so that it is actually possible to echo the contents of a file. And you can do that with echo space a $sign to denote something as a variable, open a brackets, the less than symbol, and then the name of your file, and then close the brackets. So what this is doing is saying, take what is inside hash1.txt and echo like that variable, the variable what's inside hash1.txt. If this variable symbol wasn't here, I think it should just echo, it should just print, if I just ran this, well, it wouldn't even allow it. There we go. But we need it to make sure it's, so what I presumed was going to happen is that it would just print it as you see it to the screen. But assuming it doesn't like the brackets. But in this case, this is going to be a variable. It's going to say what's inside hash1.txt, the contents of hash1.txt as a whole printed to the screen. And I can run that and I can see the same hash come out. So I can take that all in 1 line, pipe it right to hash ID without having to cat it, select the whole thing, copy it, echo, paste it, then pipe it. I can do it all in 1 line and get that same analyzed answer that it's probably an MD5. So knowing that's probably an MD5, I'm going to go ahead and use John with that format. So on the Kali Linux attack boxes, the John is only available in the following places, so you need to write the full path for it. So in this case, /sbin/John. If you're running the recommended standard attack box, you could just type John. I'm going to tell it that I want it to perform the operation on hash1.txt. I want it to give it a format, and that format is going to be raw-md5. The format's pretty much always going to be raw dash and then the lowercase version of whatever hash ID has told you. So in this case, MD5. And then lastly, I need to give it a word list to use, because what John is doing is it's going down every word in the word list and hashing each of those words with the format that you've specified, and then comparing it to the hash that's taken from the text file and seeing if they match. And if it finds a match, then we know what it was before it was hashed, because there's no way to reverse the hash process. It can only be done by, like, you're only doing it by hashing lots of options until you end up with one that matches, and then you can trace it back. So we're going to give it a word list, and that word list is just going to be the one we downloaded, which is at this location and was just called wordlist.txt. And I can get this to run, and I find my first hash flag, code obscura flag. And I can start quite quickly repeating this progress for the rest. So let's go echo our hash2.txt to hash ID. What is the second hash type? It's a SHA-1, it thinks is most likely. Okay, so let's go into our John. We'll change MD5 to SHA-1. No need to use the dash here, just SHA-1. And our hash to hash2, and we'll run this. Another flag available for us, the code slayer flag. Okay, we're on a roll, let's keep going. Echo the third hash to hash ID. What type of hash is number 3? It reckons it is a SHA-512. Okay, go into our John line, SHA-512, hash number 3. We're here with a hacker flag, number 3. Right, 2 left to go. Going into hash 4. Most likely options here are Snefru 256 and SHA-256. So let's go for, let's go for Snefru 256 and hash number 4. Doesn't like Snefru. Let's just try SHA-256. So I'll just try that one before I go and look up what the Snefru format looks like in John, just in case I don't have to. Okay, SHA-256 worked, so that's our 4th flag. 1 left to go. Send it to hash ID. Looks like another MD5. It's MD5 on number 5. And security flag. And that is all of our hash flags. Now, I expect during that I did go pretty quick through all of those. We get running once I got started. So feel free to go back, slow me down, pause me, etc., as we're going through. But once you kind of get into that hang of things, get into that style, the same set of steps each time, you can kind of start blitzing through. I'm using the up arrow on my keyboard a lot to go back to previous commands and then just edit them slightly to whatever I need it to be. All right. So we have 3 tabs left. We have one more other flag to find. There's a password for something called files.zip, and then there's a John flag. So where to go from here? Let's go back to one of our initial points, which was our Nmap scan, our lay of the land. Was there something in there that we didn't clock the first time, we didn't investigate yet, because we were immediately distracted by the presence of a website? So I'll go ahead and run the Nmap scan again. Once again, these tags I'm running with kind of my standard starting ones for a CTF, to dash little s capital V to show me the services running on the ports and the versions of those services, dash VV to have it be quite verbose, nice and readable, good amount of information, and then dash capital T, which lets you set a speed between 0 and 5, 0 being very, very quiet, takes ages, very paranoid, 5 being very, very quick, very aggressive, setting it to a speed of 4, so it's going to be pretty quick, pretty aggressive, but it's going to be a capture the flag, so these are servers put up for this purpose. So we do find there was this file transfer protocol, so a way to, like, where a server is hosting files that you can download or upload to. Now let's add one extra thing to our Nmap scan, and that's going to be, let's run a basic vulnerability check on these to see if any of them are susceptible to any exploits. Just give us a little bit of extra information. That's always what we're looking for, is extra information. So I'm going to do that with -s capital C, which is going to run a standard script scan on each of the ports and try and garner some additional information, find out if any of the ports are out of date, running out of date services, and therefore might have exploitable weaknesses. This will take a little bit longer than our previous Nmap scan because it's got to run that scan on each open port that it finds. There we go. Not as pretty as the previous one, but here we go. Port state service reason. Here's the start of our information section. We have open FTP port. Anonymous FTP login allowed. Now, even if we didn't know what that meant, we could see it here and then go, ask that question, what does that mean? Okay, let's have a Google. Let's figure out what this does. Let's do that, exactly that. Anonymous file transfer protocol enables remote users to use the FTP server without an assigned user ID and password. Anonymous FTP enables unprotected access, no password required, to selected information about a remote system. Interesting. A bit more here we go. Anonymous FTP logins are usually the username anonymous. Okay. Let's see if we can connect to this FTP server, which we'll do just with FTP and then the IP address of our target machine. It's asking for a name. I guess that's going to be our username. So we're going to give it anonymous. A password. Presumably we don't need one, so I'm just going to hit enter. Login successful. Can we list what's at this location? We can. Files.zip and flag.txt. So let's go ahead and download both of these to our home computer with get files.zip. There we go. I have made a spelling mistake. Files.zip. There we go. Successful. And get flag.txt. Also successful. All right, there doesn't seem to be anything else here, so let's exit. Make sure we now have those files. We have flag.txt and in here in red, files.zip. Now this is immediately telling me this is a password protected file, which does make sense considering that one of the try hacks me boxes we're going to try and answer is what is the password for it. Let's see if this flag.txt file maybe gives us a flag and gives us any clues. FTP server for life, that's our final other flag. It also says you should know the password for files.zip. And the hint for the password for files.zip on TryHackMe is that we've used it lots of times before. So having done this before, it did take me quite a few attempts the first time to figure that one out, but eventually found that the password was Masterschool with a capital M. Let's do a little cleanup, and we shouldn't need any of these hashes in this word list. And if we do, we know how to get them. So here's a chance to remove some files. I think as an experiment even, let's see if we can get rid of all the #1, #2, #3, #4, and #5 all at once by hash star.txt for any number of characters. Well, it did run, it didn't give me an error. Have they all been deleted? They have. None of them are there anymore. That's cool, that works. And then let's remove wordlist.txt as well. Just leave us the flag and the files. So we figured out the password is Masterschool with a capital N. That only leaves us one flag to get. Presumably it's going to be inside this files.zip folder. So let's unzip our files.zip. It's going to ask for this password. I'm going to go for Masterschool with a capital M. Is extracted secret.zip and wordlist.txt. Let's see that. Secret.zip and wordlist.txt. Okay. So we see another password protected zip file and a word list. Presumably I'm going to need to use this word list for something. Otherwise I wouldn't be given it. I'm going to need to figure out a password for this secret.zip. The flag that I'm searching for on Try Hack Me, the last one is called John flag. When I need to use John the Ripper in this word list to somehow crack this secret.zip password, can John crack passwords on zip folders and files? Let's Google. Can John the Ripper crack password protected zip files? Use John the Ripper to break password protected zips. Let's see if we can get to one answer. The zip to John command. Oh, let's read the question, I guess. Run zip to John with a file location. This will probably be what the secret.zip in this case, and send it to zips.txt. It's not great. Anything there? But maybe there's zip to John, there's documentation and zip to John. Zip to John for password protected zip files. Again, not too helpful. Okay, does zip to John a tool that exists here? It does, it just needs to be in the following places. So I need that same extension at the beginning. Let's see if we have a manual page on this. Okay, we definitely don't have a manual page. Let's see if we can do a help page. Aha. Okay, so it may have taken a little bit of searching to find the exact format for this. I'm going to come back to this one where it's asking me to do use zip to John on the file that's password protected probably. You send it to a text file, and then you run John on that file. And based on this, I shouldn't need to use a format specifier because John should recognize the format of the hash. So I should be able to write /s/zip to John on secret.zip, sending it to, call it hashed zip.txt. Okay, let's have a check. Okay, that did work. I have a hashed zip.txt. And now, if the internet is to believe, be believed, I should be able to run John on cached zip.txt. I don't need to specify a format, but I'll still need to specify a word list, which will be our word list.txt. Yeah. Cross fingers and hope for the best. Seems to have worked. CTF time. So presumably that's going to be the password for secret.zip. So let's try unzipping secret.zip with the password CTF_time. Extracting John_flag.txt. We check that's there. It is, and bring it to the screen. And we have found our final flag. However, they add a curveball at the end, and after some blind attempts on my part, had this not working, I discovered that you needed to change this 1 into a capital I in order to get for TryHackMe to accept it, and you to be able to get the perfect score of 660. And there we've come to the end of our Capture the Flag. I hope many of you have found this helpful. If there are any ways you found any of these flags that I haven't shown, I'd love to see it. You can write it in the comments. As I said, there'll be more walkthroughs and guides coming on the way. Hopefully the next one should be on a Capture the Flag that uses a fair amount of PowerShell commands, as that's something I'm myself want to get more familiar with. And for me, Capture the Flags are some of the best practice, especially just feeling comfortable moving around, whether it's in Linux or in Windows in PowerShell, that is available. Thank you very much for watching. If you've made it all the way through to this end, you've done very, very well. I'll try to waffle on less in future videos, or maybe just have more of a upbeat voice. I've been told it's very, very low and drowning out. But thank you very much for joining me for this one. See you next time.